Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, Mastering Anesthesia, where we will discuss about difficult topics in anesthesia and make it easy to remember and understand. Now, today's topic is very important. It is pertinent for every anesthetist, whether you're junior, whether you are senior. Everyone has to remember and understand neuromuscular transmission in order for us to really grasp how neuromuscular blocking drugs work. So this is the neuromuscular junction. This is where the neuromuscular transmission occurs. It's between the motor neurons and the skeletal muscle, the motor end plate here. All right, so what happens? This is the axon. The action potential propagates through the axon, reaches the terminal button, and here it activates this voltage gated calcium channels where the voltage activates the calcium channels, opening it, so allowing calcium to flow into the terminal axon. Here is also another voltage gated calcium channels, allowing calcium to flow into the terminal axons. And here is where it activates these vesicles. These vesicles contain acetylcholine, and each of these vesicles contain about 10,000 acetylcholines. Yeah. So this mobilizes this acetylcholine to its release sites. So these vesicles will fuse with the terminal axon membrane and releases its content via exocytosis. So acetylcholine will be released into the synaptic cleft. Synaptic cleft. This seemingly huge gap here is only about 20 nanometers. It is very small. In contrast to a red blood cell, let's give it a comparison. This is around 6 to 8 micrometer. So this is comparable to almost as small as a virus. Yeah. So moving to what actually happens to the acetylcholine, it will bind to, here are acetylcholine receptors. Here are also acetylcholine receptors. So they will bind to the acetylcholine receptors. So when the acetylcholine attaches to the acetylcholine receptor, activating the acetylcholine receptors, allowing ions to flow through, depolarizing the postsynaptic membrane. This portion will be depolarized. And once enough depolarization happens, it will spread to the perijunctional membrane. Perijunctional membrane. This, in turn, will cause the voltage-gated sodium channels to open. So sodium ions will flow through and causes depolarization of the perijunctional membrane. And then what happens next is it will spread to the sarcotubular system, opening sodium channels, allowing calcium to flow out of the sarcoplasmic reticulum, and activating the actin-myosin, which is another chapter, excitation contraction coupling, and leads to contraction of the muscle. A few caveats that I'd like to share in this regard is at a time when acetylcholine is released, about 5 million of acetylcholine is released into the synaptic cleft, and you only need about 500,000 of receptors to be activated to produce a muscle contraction. So you can see that about tenfold of safety margin. So this is particularly important where you don't need too much acetylcholine to produce muscle relaxation. And how does it being a safety net? You need a huge amount of muscle relaxant to block the acetylcholine receptors in order to stop the transmission of action potential in this neuromuscular junction. And I'd like to bring your attention to these small markings here, which I intend to write extrajunctional acetylcholine receptors. Now, these are abnormal acetylcholine receptors, which they are supposed to be found in the neuromuscular junction, but they are located outside of this neuromuscular junction. So they have different structures, they have different functionalities, and it is not desired in physiology. We will discuss about it later. Now let's talk about acetylcholine receptors. The acetylcholine receptor has 5 protein subunits comprising of 2 alpha, 1 beta, 1 delta, and 1 epsilon. It is cylindrical in structure with 2 binding sites. It is ionotropic with a central ion channel, meaning that with attachment of acetylcholine to its binding sites will cause an opening in the central ion channel. So it requires 2 acetylcholine molecules to attach to its binding site for it to change its conformation so that it allows ions to flow through. So what ions flow through in and out? So it follows the concentration gradient. So sodium and calcium will flow into the cell, and potassium will flow out of the cell. Okay. The acetylcholine receptors found in the neuromuscular junction are nicotinic acetylcholine receptors. Now I want to bring your attention to this epsilon protein subunit here. This is the normal protein subunit found in neuromuscular junction. Remember that I talked about the extrajunctional uh, acetylcholine receptor? It is when this epsilon is changed to gamma. So when this happens, you will have extrajunctional acetylcholine receptors. Now they are dysfunctional in which they have prolonged opening time and they cause increased in potassium efflux almost unpredictably. So this confers to the detrimental effect of extrajunctional acetylcholine receptors, where there will be tremendous amount of potassium leaving the cell into the circulation, so you can have significant raise in hyperkalemia, causing cardiac arrhythmias. So we've talked about acetylcholine receptors, but what about acetylcholine itself? Now let's learn how to draw the structure of acetylcholine. Really not that difficult. So start off with CH3, you have CO, you have another O here, you have 2 CH2s connected to a nitrogen, plus there, and you have 3 CH3. Practice this a couple of times and you'll be able to draw this effortlessly. Now this is very important for us to learn how to draw this, because once you're able to draw the structure of acetylcholine, it'll be simpler to draw the structure of succinylcholine, where it is basically just 2 acetylcholines linked together. So as we have discussed earlier, we need 2 acetylcholine to bind to 2 of its sites at the acetylcholine receptor, causing action potential at the postsynaptic membrane. But what happens after the action potential has wants to be terminated? So the acetylcholine will flow to just adjacent to acetylcholine receptor. You have acetylcholinesterase. Let's here you have the acetylcholinesterases. So the acetylcholine once already activates the acetylcholine receptors flow, so the acetylcholinesterase will be broken down to acetate and choline. Choline will be recycled back into the terminal axon to be reused. Acetate will diffuse away and become metabolized. So now we're going to talk about the perijunctional membranes having these voltage gated sodium channels. So these channels are important in propagation of action potential across the skeletal muscle and into the sarcotubular system, causing contraction. So the succinylcholine that is very popular in our usage has something to do with voltage-gated sodium channels. So these voltage sodium channels has three conformation. You have A, B, and C. This is the outside of the cell, and this is inside of the cell. Outside, inside, outside, inside. It has two gates. You have the upper gate and you have the lower gate. Upper gate, and lower gate. Now, the upper gate is voltage dependent, whereas the lower gate is time dependent. What does this all mean? So at conformation A, this is the resting state, resting phase, where the membranes are at repolarization state, at resting membrane potential. So when the cell is at resting membrane potential, the upper gate is closed and the lower gate is readily open. So this is the default setting. At the resting state, the upper gate closes and the lower gate opens. So when depolarization reaches the voltage gated sodium channels, remember the voltage gated upper gate here will open. So what happens next? Sodium ions are allowed to flow into the cell, propagating action potential. Shortly after the opening of the upper gate, the time-dependent lower gate automatically closes. It closes, so preventing further sodium ions from entering the cell and halting the propagation of action potential. Now, in order for the lower gate to open, the voltage-coated sodium channels, the membrane, has to repolarize for it to return back to its resting state, where the lower gate opens and the upper gate closes, so that the cycle can continue when action potential reaches it. Well, there you have it. Thank you so much for watching Neuromuscular Transmission. Please stay tuned for more content. Please like, comment, and subscribe. See you in my next video.